Good afternoon. I've just had a very productive meeting with Ursula Von Der Leyen, President of the European Commission. First, we took part in a call with fellow G7 members where we all condemned Iran's abhorrent attack on Israel last night. We agreed on the importance of Israel's security and right to defend itself in the face of this unacceptable aggression. And we call on all sides to show restraint and avoid escalating further. No one wants a regional war. We also agreed on the urgency of ceasefires in Lebanon and Gaza to allow the space for political solutions. And last night's events have highlighted more than ever that at a time of escalating conflict, including Russia's ongoing invasion in Ukraine, it is vitally important that we ensure we work ever more closely with our partners and allies in the pursuit of peace and security. Ursula and I have agreed that we can do more together in a few key areas in particular: promoting growth and prosperity, working together on shared challenges like climate change, energy security, and illegal migration, and strengthening our shared security and stability. So we're putting our relationship with Europe on a more solid, stable footing. That's what the British people want: a return to pragmatic, sensible leadership when it comes to dealing with our closest neighbours, because they know that this matters for growth, for jobs, and for security. The detailed work to take this forward starts now. We've agreed to hold regular UK-EU summits at leader level to review progress, starting with a summit in the first half of next year. Now, of course, there will be issues which are difficult to resolve, and on areas on which we will stand firm. There will be no return to freedom of movement, no return to the customs union, no return to the single market. But we will find constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people. And now I'd like to take some questions, I think, starting with Katya.
Sorry. Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, improved music really only goes so far. What trade-offs are you willing to make with the EU, because I'll ask for them, in order to improve economic relations? They've asked for a youth mobility scheme, for example. And if you forgive me, Prime Minister, you've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts. Why now? Why those gifts and not all of them? Have you decided it was wrong to take them, or did you come under pressure? Thank you.
Well, on the question of the discussions I've had this afternoon with the President, with Ursula, tone does matter. Resetting does matter, and that has been a very important part of the message that I have carried into the meeting today. A return to pragmatism, to doing business in a respectful way, and in a way which I think will focus on deliverables rather than charging to the nearest camera to use a megaphone. So that does matter. In terms of the details of the challenges, look, of course there will be challenges along the way, but this was about a good faith step forward to constructive deliverables, which I think are achievable. The nature of the discussion wasn't in the sort of individual items. It was much more sort of setting the framework for the summits that will follow. In relation to your second question, look, we came in as a government of change. We are now going to bring forward principles for donations, because until now, politicians have used their best individual judgment on a case-by-case basis. I think we need some principles of general application. So I took the decision that until the principles are in place, it was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. I'll go to Adam.
Thank you. Adam Parsons from Sky News. Prime Minister, a couple, if I may. Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent with the British public. And also, this statement is full of good intentions, but very short of any concrete proposals. Just on one, lots of people would like to see an agreement about youth mobility, giving young people the chance to move into Europe, to spend some time there. Would you like to see that? And what progress has been made?
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on the Lord Ali investigation. It'll run its course. On the nature of the discussions today and the points you put to me, I mean, firstly, on youth mobility, I've answered and put our position pretty clearly on a number of occasions. But that really wasn't the nature of today's debate. Today's debate was the first step down to a path which will then lead to negotiations to the summit in the early part of next year, and focused on the deliverables and what we can do rather than what we can't do. But by its very nature, it was not a discussion that went into the details at this stage. It was about setting the parameters, setting the tone, agreeing how this would be done, and the sort of milestones, if you like, along the way. And in that sense, it was very constructive, positive, and with evident good faith on both sides. Thank you very much. I've got Robert.
Robert Peston, ITV. Prime Minister, the Israeli Prime Minister has said that he will retaliate against Iran. What is your position on whether he should? What is the G7 position on all of that? And related to that, the MOD has said that it helped Israel defend itself. Are there circumstances in which British forces would help with an attack on Iran? And then just briefly on this issue of the repayment, British voters will see you're repaying £6,000 plus of gifts as an admission by you that you were wrong to accept those gifts. Are you saying you made a mistake?
Look, on the question of Iran, I mean, we have condemned in the strongest terms the attack by Iran last night. And it is not to be tolerated. I think it's very clear that we stand firm with Israel. Israel does have the right to security. Israel does have the right to defend herself. And that is absolutely clear. I'm not going to get drawn further than that, nor to get drawn on the role of our own service personnel last night. Obviously, in April, we saw the role that was taken, but I'm not going to get drawn beyond that. But that is not any indication that we're going any further on this occasion. On the repayment, I can't say any more than I did. We're going to draw up some principles until they're in, which will guide everybody. Until they're in place, I thought it was right to repay these particular payments. That's the long and the short of it. Thank you. Olivia.
Olivia Ravi, GB News. Just on the specifics of a potential reset deal with the EU, can you rule out granting EU fish access to UK waters? And also briefly on this £6,000, would you consider paying back any more money?
On the question of fish, etc., again, that wasn't the nature of the discussion today. This was very much a discussion at leader level to set the tone, set the ambition, to make clear we were focused on deliverables, to set in place how we would go about these discussions and where we thought the appropriate timelines were, starting with the summit in the early part of next year, which obviously gives a sort of marker as to when we accept some progress to be made by. But we were not, it wasn't in the nature of a discussion about some of the issues, which will have to be part of the discussion, of course. But the question is about the tone and the good faith. In relation to the repayments, I can't add to the answer I've given twice now. Thank you. Bruno.
I'm going to come back to the fishing. I know you didn't talk about it today, just because you gave us some categorical assurances on free movement, customs union, and the rest. So I'm looking for a couple of categorical assurances. Will Britain hold the line on marine protection areas, bans on bottom trawling? We know that the French are unhappy with that. Can you give us a categorical assurance that Britain won't overturn the sand eel fishing ban in the North Sea that the EU is demanding that Britain drops? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, look, on the first point you make, you know, the red lines that we have set out, and we've been very open and public in relation to them, and they set the parameters of the debate that we can have. But I do think that we can be ambitious. I do think we can make progress. And today was about making sure that, as it were, from the very get-go, both sides are agreed that we want to act in good faith, we want to make progress, we want deliverables, and we want it to be constructive. The issues you raise, marine issues, etc., that literally was not the nature of the discussion today. I'm not suggesting that these things won't at some stage need to be addressed. Of course they will. But that wasn't what today was about. And I hope not to disappoint, but in the past, I'm not sure the sort of running commentary assisted this process, and therefore there'll probably be a bit less of it as we go through it this time around. Thank you very much. And then Max Delaney.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Max Delaney, AFP. You just spoke about these talks being the beginning of a long path towards negotiations, towards a reset. Can you admit now that your much vaunted reset with the EU is not going to be easy, it's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be particularly extensive after all? And then on a second issue, on youth mobility, are you sacrificing the opportunities for British youth on an altar of freedom of movement and a refusal and wanting lower immigration figures? Thank you.
Well, Max, if you're putting to me that there are going to be challenges we'll have to deal with, then of course I accept that. That is obvious. But I think when acknowledging there are going to be challenges is a good thing up front. A lot of it is to do with the tone and the intent and the good faith, and in a sense today was as much about turning the page on the old way of doing these negotiations and starting a different way of doing it, a much more constructive way of doing it. Doesn't mean the challenges aren't there, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. On the timing, look, we are putting in place milestones in order to make sure that we make progress, and therefore, you know, we will hope to keep to those timetables, and that means we'll be heading for this summit in the early part of next year. On youth mobility, look, again, I have made it clear what our position is, and in particular that free movement is a red line, but today wasn't about those individual issues. It was about the way in which we will conduct these negotiations, and the emphasis was on what we can do, not what we can't do, and on deliverables rather than sort of running commentary. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your questions.